Hey everyone, Matt here with Reach Your Summit, trail name Knowledge. In this video, I'm going to share with all of you my long-term review of the Zpacks Plex Solo tent. All right, thank you so much for joining me. So if you follow this channel, if you've seen some of my videos, if we've shared time together out on the trail or you've seen me out on the trail, you know that I'm a big fan of flat tarps and it is my preferred shelter when I'm out on the trail. I have several videos on this channel going over different tarp setups and using my tarps. But sometimes a tarp isn't the appropriate choice to go with, depending on several varying factors. Things like what my specific goal or objective might be, the time of year, the trail that I'm on, the location. Those are all things that are going to influence what type of shelter I'm bringing with me. And in some cases, I may opt for a fully enclosed tent. Now, I've used many tents over the years, and some of the things that I look for when choosing a tent are things that are going to align with my specific hiking style. I want something that's nice and light. I want something that is going to provide enough livable space for my specific build, which is 5'10" and around 160 pounds. I want it to perform well in varying conditions. I want it to also be very simple and easy to set up and simple in design, and something that sets up with one trekking pole. So that's what led me to the Zpacks Plex Solo. I purchased the Plex Solo tent in early 2022, back in January, on the day that it was first released. And since then, I've put well over 2,000 miles on the Plex Solo tent. There have been a couple of iterations since it was released, and this is one of those iterations. So for authenticity purposes, because that is something that is very important to me, I have some other videos on the channel going over the Plex Solo. One is going over a closer look at the tent, the livable space and setup. The other video is a comparison between the Plex Solo tent and a couple of other options out there. So I'll leave links in the video description below for those videos. You can check them out whenever you'd like. In those videos, you'll see the tent is white, where this one here is spruce green. So with the white tent, I had over 50 plus nights with that tent, or over 1,000 miles. Same with this one, over 50 nights and over 1,000 miles. So in total, that's where I get the 2,000 plus miles with the Plex Solo tent. And the tent overall is the same, just there's a slight difference. So the white material on the other tent is made out of a 0.5 DCF or Dyneema composite fabric for the canopy, and the floor was made out of a 1 ounce per square yard Dyneema composite fabric. The dimensions are exactly the same as this one, and everything else will be the same as this one. The only difference with this is the canopy fabric is a little bit thicker. So this is using a 0.75 ounce Dyneema composite fabric. The floor will still be the 1 ounce per square yard DCF. And I made the swap from the white tent to the spruce green, mainly because I wanted something that looked a little more subtle for dispersed camping situations. For additional frame of reference with this tent, this is often referred to now as the Zpacks Plex Solo Classic. There is also a Plex Solo Light out there, which is going back to that 0.5 DCF for the canopy, but the floor is using a 0.75 Dyneema composite fabric instead of the 1 ounce, and you lose the couple of features that you get with this tent for the inside of the tent. And very quickly, specs for this tent, for those of you who haven't seen the other videos and are unfamiliar with this tent. This is a single person, single wall trekking pole style tent that uses tension with guy lines and stakes and a single trekking pole. Total weight on my scale for this specific tent is 14.6 ounces, and the total cost is $599. I've used this tent on backpacking trips, on thru hikes, on paddling trips, and on bike packing trips. I've been out in all different types of conditions with this tent. I've set it up on varied terrain, and it has always worked really well. I've become a big fan of Dyneema composite fabric over the years for many reasons. The lightweight, the performance in varying conditions, so this will not sag if it gets wet. It sheds precipitation very well. It dries very fast when it does get wet compared to a lot of other fabrics out there. I've had this tent out in snowstorms, though it is not specifically made for those types of conditions. It's something that you may occasionally encounter if you're doing a thru hike on, say, the Appalachian Trail or even the Pacific Crest Trail, and it sheds snow pretty well, mostly in part due to its pyramid-shaped design. This is not something that I would want to bring into a high alpine environment in the middle of winter in really harsh conditions. But for the occasional mild snowstorm, this has worked really well for me. This tent has also kept me very dry in thunderstorms and heavy downpours. Sheds wind really well. I've been out in this tent with winds upwards of 40 to 45 miles per hour, and it held up really well. Kept me as comfortable as could be. I've been out on Vermont's Long Trail with this, up in New Hampshire's White Mountains, the Appalachian Trail, the Mid-State Trail, the North-South Trail, the New England Trail, and many other trails, and it has always worked really well. Some of the things I like about this tent are the livable space. So again, at 5'10", I have plenty of room for all of my gear inside of the tent with me, a 20-degree Enlightened Equipment Enigma quilt, and a 2.5 to 3 inch thick sleeping pad. When I am using an air-inflated pad, I love how small of a footprint this tent is. And though I have plenty of livable space inside of this tent for myself and my gear, it still has a relatively small footprint, so I've been able to set this up in a whole bunch of different situations, still having a nice taut pitch without any trouble. I love how quick and simple this tent is to set up. When you're first setting it up, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get things dialed in and you get more comfortable with it, it is very quick. In fact, I can set this tent up a lot quicker than many of my other tents that I use. Very straightforward, and it's nice to have that, especially in conditions where you might be setting it up in the pouring rain. It's nice to be able to get your shelter set up quick and get in there and get out of those conditions. So when I'm backpacking or thru hiking, I like to set up my Plex Solo tent with a single trekking pole. This is the Zpacks carbon fiber adjustable pole with a modified Gossamer Gear grip that I added to it. And I generally set this up to around 132 centimeters to get a nice taut pitch. And this has always served me really well. In place of the trekking pole, I can also just find a stick in my surroundings at camp and use that in place of the trekking pole. For other types of trips that I've used the tent on, whether it's bike packing or a paddling trip, I'd carry a Zpacks carbon fiber pole that is made specifically for the Plex Solo, and that has always worked really well. And then for stakes, I've been using the Zpacks carbon fiber nail stakes. The tent requires 6 of them to set up, though there are 10 total tie-outs. So you can get a really nice taut pitch. You can pull everything out a little bit more. It also helps give a little bit more stability in really windy conditions. But most of the time I just use 6. If I'm at a designated campsite and there are tent platforms that are required, say up in New Hampshire's White Mountains, then I like using some fishbone tent platform anchor stakes. And I have a video going over these and how I set them up with my trekking pole tents or my Plex Solo tent. So I'll also leave a link for that video in the description below, so you can check that out, along with a couple of other methods that I like to use when setting up a trekking pole style tent that doesn't have a structure to it and I need to set it up on a tent platform. I also really love the simplicity of this tent. So this is a single wall shelter, so it's all one piece. Don't have to worry about setting up multiple pieces, which also helps with that quick and easy setup, but that can also be a drawback. So all single wall tents are going to get some form of condensation. That's just the nature of the beast when you're using a single wall tent. In certain situations, to avoid being miserable on really heavy rainy nights, I may need to keep both of those vestibule doors closed. And in that case, when I wake up in the morning, I'll just wipe the tent off with a quick drying microfiber cloth, let it air out a little bit and pack it up and continue on down the trail. Most of the time, if I am able to, I will keep both vestibule doors rolled up just so I can enjoy the scenery and get the most airflow circulating throughout the tent. I haven't had any major durability issues with this tent at all, though this tent did come with a repair kit, which included some DCF tape and a couple of zippers. I also purchased an additional adjustable hook toggle for the outside of the tent. I haven't needed any of that. This tent has held up really well. I have used this tent with a ground sheet, whether Polycro or Tyvek, but I have also used this tent quite a bit without a ground sheet at all. I haven't had any issues with punctures, though I am very careful with my gear and I'm very selective with where I set up. If I come to a campsite that has a lot of pine needles or sticks or pine cones, I'm going to do my best to clean the site before I set up the tent. And then after I pack up the tent in the morning, I will scatter all of the natural duff back around where I shifted it, just so it looks a lot more natural again. If I am setting it up in a designated campsite, say up in New Hampshire's rocky and root-filled White Mountains, some of those campsites receive a lot of use and are heavily impacted, so that ground is going to be rock solid. You might have lots of granite and stone sticking out a little bit. So in those situations, I may lay out a piece of birch bark or some leaves or something just to soften those areas up so I don't risk getting a puncture through the floor. But if I'm going to be staying in those specific sites, I will also most likely have a ground sheet. By doing that with setting up this tent, I can be sure that I'm going to get the most value and life out of this tent, because this certainly is an investment. A couple of other things that I'll do to take care of this investment is that I like to air it out whenever it's wet. If I'm out on a through hike, I'm going to do my best to keep this dry. When I come home from a through hike or a backpacking trip, I'm also going to let this air out before I store it. I don't want mold or anything to build up inside of my shelter. If it's really dirty, I will clean this in a bucket of lukewarm water and soap that is free of additives to loosen everything up and clean it off. Then I will rinse it and let it air out before I store it. I will store it loosely, so that way all of the material isn't getting compressed over time. And then for the zippers, I like using a McNett Gear Aid zipper lubricant just to keep the zippers sliding smoothly around the door of the tent. Some of the little features that I like with this tent, there's a small loop up at the top near the apex. There, I like storing my Rovivon Aurora A5X flashlight just to have like a little lantern hanging in the tent at night. You can also hang your headlamp, which I've also done with my Nightcore headlamp. There is also a nice little pocket for items just underneath the door. And I like the additional adjustments for the bathtub floor inside of the tent. So if it's really driving rain and I'm on a hard packed surface, I don't want to get a lot of splashback. So I can pull those nice and tight to raise the floor a bit more and provide me with a little bit more protection. One thing that seems to be a matter of preference with some of the Zpacks tents is with the rainbow style door. I've seen some people say that they don't like the rainbow style door because it drops in the ground. Haven't had any major issues with the door. I simply just allow it to drop inside of the tent and tuck it away when it's open. As for my dislikes with this tent, I don't really have many. The only thing that would be a dislike for me is the thicker guy line that's used on the tensioners for this tent. It comes with a 2mm thick guy line. I swapped it out for a 1.3mm guy line. It helped shave a little bit of the total weight for the tent, but it's also been a guy line that I've been really happy with my Zpacks tarp and my Hexamid tent. So that would be my dislike, that it comes with a slightly thicker guy line, but that's easy to address and resolve. That's just my minor gripe. A couple of other drawbacks to this tent could be the packability of Dyneema composite fabric. It will pack a little bit bulkier than, say, your Sil poly or your Sil nylon, but this does still pack pretty small. Here I have it in a 4.5 liter bag. Bulk is just something that you need to be accepting of when you buy Dyneema composite fabric shelters, and that's a compromise that I'm willing to make. Also, the price. $599 is certainly steep for a tent, but you got to look at what you're getting with it. With all the Zpacks tents, these are made in the US, so you're paying for the labor, you're also paying for the materials. Dyneema composite fabric is not the cheapest fabric out there. You're paying quite a bit per half of a yard, even more for a full yard of the material. There are certainly lower cost options out there, but for using this tent close to 4 years now, for about 4 to 5 months out of each year, the steep price tag for me has made sense, and I've certainly got my money's worth out of this tent, and I will definitely be looking at replacing this tent with another Plex Solo when the time comes to replace this. When I do, it'll most likely be the Plex Solo Lite version. Plex Solo Lite definitely appeals to me, but I didn't see any need in replacing it with the current Plex Solo that I have, just because it's been such a solid tent. If you find that you're the type of hiker that is a little bit harder on your gear, or if you're out once a month or a couple of times a year and weight isn't a major concern for you, or if you're on a budget, this might not be the right tent for you. There are certainly plenty of other options out there. In fact, I do have a tent that is very similar to this that I have featured in a couple of videos on this channel, including my more recent favorite ultralight budget-friendly gear options video. So I'll leave a link in the description for this video so you can check those budget-friendly options out if you'd like, including that tent. Lastly, is this the perfect tent for me? Absolutely not. There is no perfect shelter out there. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I prefer using tarps, and in some situations that might not be the right shelter. In certain situations, this might not be the right shelter. There's no perfect shelter out there. All gear is going to be subjective, and the certain varying factors I mentioned at the beginning of this video are going to influence what type of shelter I go with. Though this is not the perfect shelter for me, this is certainly one of my favorite tents that I've used over the years. I've been really happy with it. So if you were looking at the Plex Solo, wondering a little bit more about it, I hope that you found this video helpful and my other videos going over this tent helpful as well. If you like this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing to this channel. I'm always adding new content to it. If you've used the Plex Solo tent, share your experiences with it in a comment below. I'd love to see how this tent has been working out for you, what trails and conditions you've used it out on. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I greatly appreciate it. And until the next one, I'll see you on the trail.